Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you. The acoustics are a lot better in here than they were last night, for those of you who were here last night. My name is Michelle Jakes, and I'm the Director of Exhibitions and Collections and Chief Curator here at Remai Modern. And I'm very happy to be literally sharing the mic with my co-curators on this project, Steph Canning and Maya Stark, who, technically we curated projects at our different institutions, but I think philosophically we conceive of it as one project, and we've been working together for the last year and a half on this exhibition. And for those of you who have not seen the jewel of an exhibition over at the Saskatchewan Craft Council yet, you simply must get over there as soon as you can. Steph and Maya have done an incredible job, and while the work, while there's complete sort of overlap in terms of the range of work presented in terms of the timeline, they're very different exhibitions, and it's so interesting to see a smaller grouping of work where you get to see things from across Kaija's career in close proximity to each other. I think it tells a very special story. So I don't know if I'm going to hand the mic over to the two of you so that you can introduce yourselves. And we did want to sort of start out by talking about the process of bringing this exhibition together across two organizations. So if you want to continue on with your thoughts on that, I'll follow up with anything I can think of to add.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's really a pleasure to be here and such an incredible honor to be a part of this incredible exhibition. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm Steph. I'll let Maya introduce herself.
I'm Maya. My name is Maya Stark. I'm one of the exhibitions coordinators at the Saskatchewan Craft Council, and I've worked very closely with Steph for nearly 10 years. I love her. She's incredible. And when I first came into this position, I became aware of the Saskatchewan Craft Council's intent to host a very ambitious retrospective of Kaija's work. You might be able to talk a little bit more about the origin of the project, but I will say that it was something that was very important, not only to the Craft Council, but to the art community in general. So many people felt very strongly about Kaija's work, and that having her work in a large exhibition that really represents her technique, her content, and who she was as a person, as a maker, was very important. And the Craft Council felt we really needed a partner to do this properly. If you have been to our location on Broadway Avenue, you know that it is not a very large space. And we knew we couldn't possibly host more than maybe 10 or 11 tapestries. Although for this exhibition, we fit 17. It's cozy in there. I'll pass the mic back to Stephanie, since she was there for the very original concept of this exhibition, which was brought to us by Gail Hagelum.
Thank you, Maya. So this exhibition was proposed to the Craft Council through our curatorial committee, I believe in 2011. Gail can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was quite close to that time. I was on the committee with a group of local Craft Council members and Les Potter, where Les and I job shared the exhibition's role at that time. This exhibition was proposed by Gail, and we immediately said yes. For anyone, I think there are a lot of people in this room who have been a part of a Craft Council curatorial committee meeting. an immediate yes is not normal. Those meetings are long, and we spend like hours deliberating over exhibitions. So to get an immediate yes from that committee is incredible. So we knew right away that this exhibition needed a much larger focus than we normally take on. Most of the exhibitions that come through the Craft Council are smaller group shows, but we've never done a retrospective before. So we knew it was a big undertaking. When Carmen Milenkovic joined our organization in 2014, she did some great grant writing and got us a summer student for 2 years, Zoe Fortier, who did an impeccable job cataloging so much of Kaija's archive. Kaija kept a really meticulous archive of everything related to her work, from invoices for wool to lists of collectors to ideas to samples to every award that she won, which was incredibly numerous. She kept everything. So Zoe did a really great job of compiling all of that archive into a digestible format, interviewing key community members, and really bringing it all together so we had a solid foundation to build this exhibition from. After Zoe did that work for 2 years, or 2 summers, we knew we needed a partner. We knew that we couldn't by any means do the exhibition justice in our small space, but we knew it still needed to include us because of the connection that Kaija had to the craft community and to the Craft Council. We really wanted to be a part of it. So we sought out numerous collaborators. Lots of things fell through. We put it on the books so many times and then erased it. And then finally, Michelle came to us and was the absolute perfect collaborator. So thank you so much for everything. I couldn't think of a better person to do this project with, including Maya. Yeah, this is a dream come true for me. Yeah. I'm not the best public speaker, and I get super emotional, so sorry about that. Yeah. Then in 2023, we started working with Michelle, and we clicked immediately. We saw a vision for this exhibition that we could really move forward with, and we couldn't think of a better partner in Remai Modern to present a retrospective of Kaija's work and to be able to share it with everyone in the community. Yeah. So thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you to Remai. And we'll do some thank yous at the end as well, but yeah.
I just wanted to add to that, that part of the way we came together in 2022, we did an exhibition here called In the Middle of Everywhere. And my former colleague, Rose Boutillier, I think, connected with you in order to sort of trace access to Kaija Harris work that we ended up borrowing for that exhibition. So that put Remai in touch with the Craft Council and with you and with Deirdre. And it was sort of at the back of my mind since then that this was an incredible artist and something needed to be done. And it was Deirdre who pointed out that you had in fact been working on this project for a long time. And at the same time, though, while Deirdre was telling me to reach out to you, you reached out to me because you had seen the Denise Tomasis exhibition, which similarly incorporated artists' archives, and you wanted to talk about sort of the logistics of incorporating archives in an exhibition. So I know that that's something that we want to talk about the archives and their inclusion in this project. But I also, before we do that, wanted to point out a distinction between Denise Tomasis's archives and Kaija's archives that's just occurred to me, which is that with the Denise Tomasis project, we were given access to the artist's archives by the artist's husband, who, still felt very kind of raw about the loss of his partner. So he didn't provide a lot of information to us, but Denise Tomasis's archives were full of like feelings and emotion. And you knew exactly what she was thinking every day because her sketchbooks like sort of morphed immediately into diaries. And Kaija's archive is much more objective. Like all of the information is there, but we had to reach out to members of her family and her friends like Deirdre and Donna and Gail. And I know that at the end we'll have a long list of people that we thank in that regard to sort of fill in the flavor of who the person was. But I hope we've achieved that. And this really was a project that, because Kaija hadn't been given her due attention, involved a lot of that kind of primary research. So I wonder if we want to talk about that for a few minutes.
So as Steph mentioned, we had a fabulous summer student at the Saskatchewan Craft Council funded by Young Canada Works to pull all this information into a digestible archive. Zoe also scanned for many, many hours all the slides, handwritten letters, sketchbook pages. So we have wonderful digital copies of a lot of this data as well. And we're just so grateful to Deirdre for sharing all that information with us, because the archive, as Steph mentioned, I'm just repeating things you're saying, provided a really solid foundation for us to work from. It also gave us directions to look to find the many, many pieces that were in private and public collections. There were invoices, records of sales. We could start emailing people saying, hey, do you have this? And something to also, another group to thank are the many collectors who very graciously lended us their wonderful Kaija Harris pieces. This exhibition would not exist without all of you, so thank you. The archive gave us access to Kaija's voice. While we didn't have sort of the more personal diary aspect, we did have these many, many copies of letters that Kaija had intended to mail to people. We perhaps saw the drafts and not the final one, but that, as well as the artist statements she wrote over decades, gave us a really wonderful sense of how she thought about her practice, which was so important for how we wanted to install the exhibition and the kinds of things we wanted to focus on. And then last year, we hired a curatorial intern to help Steph and I continue working on the archive as well as prepare for this exhibition. So a special thank you to McCall Kent. McCall, do you want to wave up your hand? There's McCall. Thank you, McCall. They worked so hard to not only find us the resources we needed out of that very dense archive, but to put it all into proper storage. So, we won't get into the tedium of archival storage, but I'm talking acid-free papers. Yeah, Steph is happy to talk about archival storage solutions, and I think McCall would be happy to as well, because they learned so much. What else to say about the archive?
I think what was really valuable about the archive for us is that both Maya and I and Michelle never got to meet Kaija during the height of her career. So having access to her personal archive like Maya said, gave us access to Kaija's voice. It gave us access to her process and really helped us form a clear picture of how we wanted to present the exhibition in a way that would honor her. At first, Maya and I, coming from the Craft Council, were like, this show's about craft. It's about like capital C craft. That's what it has to be. And then we started diving deeper into the archive and we were like, oh, no, it's not. It is not about that because that's not who Kaija was. Kaija was a really intentional, really thoughtful, really incredible artist. And she talked about that distinction between art and craft at length in her letters, and I'm sure to many of you people here in the audience. And we really got to glean that from the archive, which was so incredibly important because we wouldn't have been able to present an exhibition that represented her if we didn't have access to that.
I would just add to that that I came into the project quite late. So while the Craft Council had been working towards a Kaija Harris exhibition since 2011, it's pretty unusual to start working towards an exhibition of this scale a year and a half before the exhibition opens. And it was because of the meticulous work done with that archive that instead of, sort of sifting through stuff for years to find what you needed, I could go over for an afternoon and go like this. I need the file from the Banff years, or I need the file on Sun Ascending. So that used to be the way museums worked, where you had time for research, where there were even people who were paid to do that kind of research to form the foundation for exhibitions. But things work at a different pace now, and I think it's safe to say that what we're presenting is kind of an old school, very well researched, very well thought through analysis, retrospective of the artist's work. And that is entirely thanks to the work, the fact that Kaija Harris was not quite a pack rat, but almost, and the incredible work that you all did with Zoe and McCall on organizing that.
We're talking about the different aspects of the show. Maybe.
What are we talking about?
Yes, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the different aspects of our exhibition, because even though they are a conjoined project together, we really tried to have different focuses in each of our spaces so that we could tell a really good story about Kaija. So at the Saskatchewan Craft Council, we really wanted to focus on the process and the technical innovation of Kaija's work and present folks with the opportunity to see different parts of her career, different series throughout the career, as well as some little behind the scenes viewing of the process of how she created work, how she planned for her work, and we tried to do that through the inclusion of drawings from the archive. I wish we could have shown all of them. Honestly, for each piece, there was at least 6 full-size 11 by 17 full-color drawings that showed a different aspect or idea of the piece, and I've never encountered in my career an artist that spends the time to think through the process and to think through the composition of a piece so thoroughly. And it was incredibly inspiring to be able to look through that personally. So we really wanted to be able to present that to people viewing the works as well.
Those drawings are just incredible. Artists, keep your sketches. I know we think at the time, this doesn't matter This is on cartridge paper. I don't care. Keep them, because one day someone's going to want to see them. They're beautiful. And it gave us some really amazing insight into Kaija's process. Not only were there sketches where, just very quickly she was sort of mapping out, ooh, I like this idea. And then, in the next one, she'll change the composition to be vertical. But then there was a point where the drawings had these very lightly rulered grids with math all over. And I'm not a weaver, so don't come for me if I speak poorly about some techniques, but it gave me, as a non-weaver, so much appreciation for the art, the craft, the technical aspects. Kaija was meticulous. You can see that from her drawings, and I think when we sometimes see work on a wall, we become a bit disconnected from the labor and from the planning. And so having the archive, having the drawings, gives us such an amazing window into her process and the things that she cared about. I had another thought. One piece that Steph and I think we both did a big happy dance when the lender said we could have it. I think sort of the main piece of our installation is the work Bringing in the New World Order. This is a very unique piece when considering the archive of Kaija's work. It's the most, what did I say earlier? It's the most overt representation she has of sort of her political views and her feelings about political events. So that piece, for those who haven't seen it, is a wonderful blue and orange and brown tapestry. Up at the top, you can see planes that are sort of moving back and forth between the clouds, and then there's fire coming out of this cityscape with people along the bottom just moving across the picture plane. She, in a few pieces, and this is described in our installation, she would put in these interesting codes. She would create a substitution cipher. So each letter of the alphabet is transposed with a symbol of some kind. And for her, it was these sort of stitch marks to create like her own set of runes. And she had intended to weave into that. Kaija Sanelma Harris wove this tapestry in the year of the Gulf War. And it's just a shockingly visceral piece. It's beautiful. And it's very, very sad. I feel it's very emotional. It's so different, but it's very much her. So that's a piece where when Steph got the email, she texted me right away and said, "We got it." And I knew exactly what she meant. Yeah, so if you haven't been to the Craft Council exhibition, I encourage you to spend some time with that work. We do have a didactic panel talking about the piece.
Yeah, and despite it being about something that occurred in the past, it still feels really relevant today with everything that's going on in our political climate. I feel like that you can say that about so much of her work. It's timeless. It's very elegant. And I hope you come and have a peek at that work. It's definitely the highlight of the show at the Craft Council for us.
Thank you. Over here, I think we had a similar experience in terms of digging into the archive and realizing, oh, this is not about capital C craft. I kind of went into this thinking, this is where we're going to situate Kaija in Saskatchewan art history, and there will be very kind of didactic ways to do that, comparing her work to the work of painters that are using similar compositions or palettes. And then when I dug into the archive, I realized that you didn't really need to make a strong case for her work as capital A art. It just sort of effortlessly occupies that in-between place where it's both. So instead, what I looked for in creating the flow of this exhibition were moments of sort of clear relationship between Kaija and visual artists. So it wasn't about imposing an art history on her work. It was about finding the relationships that she had with visual artists. So the exhibition starts with one of those examples. When Kaija first moved to Saskatoon in 1973, there was no craft council. She didn't know how to find the craft community. But she did find the Shoestring Gallery, the precursor to AKA Artist Run Center. And there she connected with artists like Otto Rogers. So that small blue painting is an Otto Rogers work on paper, painting on paper. And it's presented alongside a work where Kaija talks about, finding the painters and connecting with their work, and that Otto Rogers was somebody whose work she particularly connected with because some of his paintings looked like the wind had just moved a garden onto the canvas. And I really, this was an accidental moment in terms of the hanging of the show. Like Steph and Maya, I couldn't stop myself from taking more and more and more drawings. So I ended up with those botanical drawings, those florals, and I didn't know where to put them. And then it became obvious that they should go beside the quote that Kaija said about Otto Rogers Gardens and Otto's garden. And then there's a picture in the case of Kaija looking out the window with flower pots on the windowsill, and she's looking towards her garden. And it's a nice moment where it sort of expresses what Donna had told me about looking at flowers with Kaija, and it sort of brings to life that kind of memory that people would share with us as we were developing this exhibition. So the 4 artists included in this exhibition, who the other 3 were people who were quite close to Kaija. Kai Chan, textile artist of Chinese birth from Toronto, but who had a show here, and they had met in Banff years ago when they used to do big fiber arts blowouts in the summer at the Banff Art Center. Gail Hogbloom and Donna Rose. There are moments where their friendships with Kaija are represented. But I think the other way the show is maybe distinct from the Craft Council show is with more space, we have more iterations of things from different series. So you really get a sense of her color work and the variations from piece to piece. These 3 pieces are all from the same series, the Counterpoint series. One is in the Remai Modern collection. The other 2 are on loan to us. And you get the clear sense of how she's working through color and composition just as a painter does.
Thanks. One thing that we were talking about when preparing for this talk was what should we talk about, obviously, but also kind of wanting to give people what isn't represented on the didactic panels. What can't you see when you look at the work? What is that personal connection? And we all just kind of reflected on how much this exhibition came together because of the memories of Kaija and because of how generous the community is here in Saskatchewan. Everybody is so open, one, to sharing the works literally from their living rooms, to also just sharing their stories about her. So it really gave us such a rich sense of who she was, so we could present this in a really respectful way. So just thank you to everyone for sharing your memories and sharing I'm still learning things even today and yesterday about Kaija that I didn't know before because of the conversations I've been having with folks, and it's just really incredible.
Why'd you hand this to me? My turn. What to follow up from that? It's really incredible seeing all this work. My first thought, and this is, I should really say my second thought, but my first thought is that I have this selfish feeling that I'm so happy we could partner with the Remai because I otherwise would maybe never see some of these pieces in person. And I very selfishly wanted to so bad. The Counterpoint series, incredible. One thing that you can see in this exhibition and at the Craft Council is how Kaija worked her way through playing with the sculptural form on tapestry. And there were many strategies she employed before she came to her rather well-known double weave tapestries where the trees are formed off the tapestry. At first, she would, according to her words, there's this really fantastic, I'm going everywhere. There's this wonderful interview. Thank you, Steph. There's this wonderful interview with George Moppet in a catalog from the Mendel Art Gallery. The exhibition was called Tapestries 1990 to 1993, I believe. But it's like 8 pages of interview with Kaija. And in it, she shares about how she wanted to play and experiment with the form and create more of a sculptural texture in her weavings. And at first she would, as many people would in their first version of that, sew 2 pieces together. So you'd get the rippled surface, but it's been attached. 2 weavings, then attached. And then she played with stuffing the back of the weaving. So there's some good examples of, is there an example of the stuffed furrows here? Maybe just at the Craft Council, where she would stuff the weaving from the back to create this sort of undulation, to create furrows in a field. But then this was all very arduous. And she talks about how what she really wanted to do was weave that all at once. So this led her to developing a double weave technique. And she talks about how she based this off of a very well-known British weaver, Theo Mormon. And you can see these wonderful examples of the way in which it's 2 weavings at once. And just an incredible amount of work and labor. And I encourage you to look at these sculptural pieces and consider that this is something she had to meticulously plan well in advance. This is not something that you instinctually figure out. You know, a painter can step back from their piece, look at it and say, that's not quite right, and go back in. A weaver must know exactly what they're doing. Something that I've learned in this process is a very, very big respect for weaving. It's incredible. And a high respect for Kaija's work ethic. She was so ambitious. Her work ethic was phenomenal. And yeah, I guess I want to encourage this audience to support the weavers of this province. We have some incredible fiber artists in Saskatchewan. Yes. And they're there. I promise you can find them. They have wonderful work. So that's my plug for the weavers of Saskatchewan, is they deserve recognition and support from their community. Yes, and during their lifetime.
Maybe I'll just say a few words about Sun Ascending, and then we'll close. Is there anything? Yeah, and yeah. So most of you have probably seen the show by now. For those of you who we've held captive in this first bay who haven't seen the show, Kaija's most monumental piece is in the next room. It's called Sun Ascending. And it is a tapestry in 24 parts, and each section is about 3 by 13 feet. And we've more or less dedicated much of that next space to an analysis of Kaija's work on this piece because it's such a significant work. It was originally commissioned by TD Bank for the Toronto Dominion Centre in Toronto at the same time that Joe Fafard's very famous bronze cows were commissioned. And again, going back to the archive, because of having access to that material, we can see Kaija working through the process of getting to this incredibly monumental piece, which hung in the lobby of one of the towers on either side of the access to the bank of elevators. And it's very interesting to think about the 80s as a time when architects often worked with fiber artists to create pieces to warm up cold architecture. That was actually something that Kaija did, had a relationship with an interior design firm and made pieces for them. But this commission was of an entirely different scale. And we owe great thanks to the Mackenzie Art Gallery for taking care of that work. TD Bank deaccessioned it a number of years ago, and it's now in the Mackenzie collection. And as you will see, we had to get creative with the installation. But because of the archive, we were able to have access to Kaija's original proposal for the project, and realize that she actually conceived of it as two pieces, at least at the very beginning when she started thinking this project through. So that is my justification for our getting creative with the hanging, because the piece is so monumental that even in this giant space, we didn't quite have a wall long enough for it. But I think this is probably the first time that we've been able to show that piece alongside so much of the information that Kaija was working with to develop the piece, including like the sales slip from Prairie Lily Weavers, which was one of the suppliers for the wool that she used. So on the one hand, this is a project where you get to admire the beauty of the work themselves, but sort of being able to dig into the information that is at the foundation of each of the works, we hope gives you a different, more detailed, more intimate experience of the artist as well as the work.
So we wanted to take a minute to give some very targeted thank yous, because this exhibition has really been a big labor for so many folks. So we wanted to say some thanks. I first and foremost wanted to thank Michelle and Maya for being such incredible co-curators for this exhibition. It's been a dream to work with both of you, so thank you both so much. Maybe I'll leave some of these for you. Okay. And of course, a big thank you to Deirdre for sharing the archive with us and being so generous with your time and everything that you've put into making this possible. Same goes to Gail Hagbloom. This wouldn't have come together without her perseverance and her support of this project. A big thank you to the Saskatchewan Craft Council staff, both past and present, Les Potter, to Alexa and Leah, and of course to Carmen Milenkovic, who really persevered on this project as well, and we wouldn't be here without her support of it. There's also so many people in the Craft Council community that have given interviews, who have loaned works, who have shared their memories with us, and we are forever indebted to everybody who has helped and contributed to this project.
Also, we did thank Zoe and McCall, but I'm going to say it again. Zoe and McCall, thank you so much for your hard work. It really transformed this data into just the perfect resource that was very much needed to make this exhibition more personal and grounded. Thank you to the collectors. Again, like, this would not be possible without private, public, and corporate collaboration. You went out of order a little. No, it's okay. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Stephanie. Steph is such a hard worker. She's really incredible. And she no longer works with the Saskatchewan Craft Council. And I speak for everybody there that we miss her all the time. Yeah.
And a big thank you to the entire Remai team for making this possible for us to collaborate together.
My thank yous overlap with yours almost entirely. So I won't belabor things, but I will just add Donna Rose to that list. Earlier this year, I had a really wonderful weekend when Deirdre Harris came to town, and we followed some paths, some friendship paths, and had a really wonderful afternoon with Donna and then Gail Hogbloom, and I learned so much from the three of you as somebody who didn't have the privilege of knowing Kaija, so thank you for that. And we've probably forgotten somebody, but we'll mill around and thank you in person. So thank you. If anybody has a question that they'd like to ask in the group setting, please feel free. There's one right there.
Is there a sponsor in the work? We would love to make a beautiful, yeah, it should be teeny bag, yeah, to make a beautiful, like, coffee table book of Kaija's career. It costs a lot of money. We'd love to do it. So if someone wants to pay for it, we're on it. Yeah.
And I would add too, though, that like, as much work as we have found, we know that there's more work to be traced. So it's not so much an oversight that we don't have a book for the opening. It was a little with a little forethought that we decided, like, let's wait and see who comes forward with more work so that we can make something more comprehensive.
I have a comment that is so amazing when I work as an artist, and when you see this dedicated team moving forward, and I'm not so I didn't know anything about it, so now I know a lot about them. It comes so respectfully, like a major beauty exhibition, and also the context we spoke about, but also just the sort of random luck with certain people having the big headlight shone on a life's work. It's just so great.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about the Kaija connection to the landscape and how when she came here, that inspiration she found and how it's been represented?
Do you want to?
Absolutely. In Kaija's early works, you see very much a fascination with landscape. And in some of her writing, like her artist statements, her letters to folks, she talks about in Sweden when she was with her foster parents. I think there was a daily trip she took through the woods and could see the mountains, and how that was one of her favorite parts of the day, just moving through the landscape. And she remarked later when she moved to Saskatoon how they were driving from the south to the north, and then all of a sudden she saw the prairie light, which I think a lot of us who live here understand what that light feels like, what it looks like, and that's something that really captured her imagination. And it's something that in the 70s very quickly became reflected in her work. There's a really wonderful quote from Catherine Miller, who was a on the jury for Dimensions back in the 70s. And Catherine had said that when Kaija brought that work that was her first Premier's Prize win to the jury, Catherine saw that Kaija had just found the prairie light, and she had moved from the northern blue and cold into the warm prairie sunlight. And I think that's just I can't quite do it verbatim, but we do have it, I believe, in our exhibition quoted on the wall. But it's a really wonderful quote about, I think it highlights that Kaija noticed color and cared about color, and in particular, the way the color affected her understanding of the landscape. And so the prairie flatness was something that she was very attracted to, but we also see a lot of verticals. We do see many trees. Forests were a focus of hers. And not that that isn't something we see in Saskatchewan. There are certainly trees here. You know, we talk about it like there isn't trees, but there are beautiful aspen groves. And I think the landscape is something that was just always in her mind, that relationship to it. Another thing we learned from hearing from her friends and her family is that she would walk, she would spend time on the river. It was a daily practice for her to engage with the landscape.
Yeah, I think that's really apparent in her works. And one thing that I've noticed is that sometimes it's hard to tell if you're looking at a prairie landscape or a Scandinavian landscape. And I think she can really effortlessly blend both of them together to create like her own personal landscape, which I think is really lovely.
Yeah, there's a quote that is included in this exhibition right at the end where she talks about her perfect house would be a house where you opened the front door onto a prairie landscape and the back door onto a Finnish landscape. And there's also a point in her life, I think, through conversation with Donna and Gail, where she begins thinking about Agnes Martin and speaks of the trying to express the feeling or idea of a landscape rather than the literal landscape. So she was moving through the landscape in a way where what she wanted to weave was what she felt rather than what she saw. Leah.
Why don't you tell us?
Dimensions is the Saskatchewan Craft Council's, let's see if I still remember, biennial touring juried exhibition of fine craft. It was established in the 70s, and it really kind of started the Craft Council from the ground up. It was originally conducted by the province of Saskatchewan with a big Premier's Prize. Kaija actually won the first ever Premier's Prize that was awarded. We have the original certificate at the Craft Council. And it's still a really important program in the Saskatchewan craft community today. And I believe the Craft Council will be making some announcements soon in the next few months about the next Dimensions round. It's a really incredible opportunity for Saskatchewan artists to be celebrated, and the Craft Council does a really great job of doing that.
Don't know that I have anything to add to that. Steph did great. It's like you still work with us. No. Thank you for the question, Leah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I think we'll then wrap up and meander, and I hope we can talk a lot about Kaija. One of the ways in which people continue to affect our lives is through our memories of them. So, yeah, I hope you all get a chance to share your memories today.